So welcome back. Before I start, I just want to say this about these videos that I produce. I do not have any script. I just simply turn on the camera, and then something pops into the mind, a sentence, and then I say that sentence, and then I start talking from there. What I have noticed is that while I am speaking and while I am recording, there is a very clear tendency that the message becomes more and more precise as the recording progress. It is as if there is some kind of download to me, and then I'm speaking from that. And as I am speaking, the message becomes more and more clear and more precise. And that is the same for every video that I am recording. And that means that the juicy stuff. No, that means that the more potent is typically towards the end of the videos. So that is just a quick notice to those of you who jumps away early on. When you do that, in most cases, you are missing out on the best of it. Then you might think that you could just jump to the end of each video. But that will typically not do you any good either, because the potent stuff at the end is building upon the entire talk. So that is just a quick notification about these videos. Okay. Today's topic is bliss. And when we talk about bliss, we have to also talk about the opposite, suffering. The strange thing is that when we talk about suffering, everybody knows what we mean when we talk about suffering. We could also call it psychological pain. But when we talk about bliss, then there often is a whole array of different interpretations to what bliss is. So it is possible to have a dialogue and talk about a subject, but if if those who are having the dialogue, if they have different interpretations of a concept, and in this case it is the concept of bliss, if there are different interpretations of that concept, then it is possible to talk forever without getting anywhere. Because we are actually talking about something different. So it is important to clarify what is meant, what is being meant by a particular concept. And then we can start and argue, to argue about, no, that is not that. It means this and it means that and it means... That is not my point. My point is that when you have a concept like bliss, the concept bliss points towards something within us. And for some humans that it can point towards something, and in other humans it can point towards something else. Okay, the way I defined the concept bliss is euphoria. And that is why I am not particularly fond of the concept bliss. Because in a lot of spiritual jargon, one of the concepts that are often used in spirituality is bliss. And the mind locks to that concept. Ooh, I want bliss. The problem is that bliss, and as I said, I use the concept in the same way as the concept euphoria. And wanting euphoria, that is a heightened mental state with release of a lot of chemicals in the brain that actually acts like drugs to the mind. And if we in spirituality is chasing bliss, is chasing euphoria, we are drug addicts. There are no difference. We have become drug addicts because we want that kick. And then you might ask, but what's wrong with that? Well, there is nothing wrong about that. But if you want your kick, then you better be ready for the hangover. And that is the hangover, that is suffering. Because you cannot know euphoria without suffering. Because if you do not get your euphoria, then you are suffering. There are no difference to that. There are no difference between that and any other kind of drug addict. So, if we use the word bliss in the same way as we use the word euphoria, then we have to stop using it in spirituality. Because it will drive us mad. I hope you are able to see that. So the spiritual search, is that a search for bliss? If it is, then you are a drug addict. the spiritual search, what would be a more authentic spiritual search then? The search for truth. But then again, we have to ask ourselves, what is truth? And I hope you can see that once again, we have to define what we mean by the concept truth. But because if we are having a dialogue and we are discussing truth, then you might have a completely different view on what truth is than I do. And then we could be talking or arguing about truth forever. So, I will define truth. And this is when it tends to become difficult for the conceptual mind. Because the conceptual mind has a relative idea about what truth is. That means that for the conceptual mind, truth is something that is relative to a certain worldview, relative to a certain belief system. And that is only a relative truth. That means that that kind of truth is only to be considered being truth within a certain conceptual frame. And if the spiritual search is for that kind of truth, then once again, that will not take us anywhere. That will only take us into fanatism. Because if we try to define truth within a conceptual framework, then we are building a belief system. And if we make that belief system our truth, then we have to defend that belief system. And that is actually pretty much what is going on planet Earth. 7 or is it 8 billion people running around trying to defend a belief system. Not necessarily a religious belief system. There are belief systems are not limited to religion. Not at all. Not at all. There is a different kind of truth. You see, truth, if it is to be the absolute truth, then it cannot be destroyed. It cannot be hurt. You cannot hurt or destroy the truth that I am talking about. And it is not my truth. I have seen truth, and by seeing the truth, I have surrendered to it, because there is nothing I can do about truth. Trying to do something about truth, that leads to suffering. So what is truth? What is the truth that I am talking about? This is truth. And as I said, The conceptual mind has a very hard time understanding that. But what is truth. So you cannot escape truth. If you want to know exactly what enlightenment is, then enlightenment is, or it can be defined as 100% cooperation with what is. A complete surrender to what is. And when it is seen clearly, it is very easy to surrender to truth. Because when it is seen clearly, it is also seen very clearly that fighting, pushing against, trying to destroy or trying to alter truth is a futile game. And you will lose. Not once, not twice, but always. So if you wish to end suffering, then you need to discover that truth is what is. The problem with that is that the conditioned mind has been conditioned to use dissatisfaction to motivate itself. That means that if there are no dissatisfaction, there are no motivation. And dissatisfaction is a very strong motivating force. But it doesn't matter how dissatisfied you are and what you are doing from that motivation. It doesn't matter. You cannot change truth. Then truth is you being dissatisfied. And you being dissatisfied is suffering. We need to see this very clearly. You do not have to surrender to anything. You cannot surrender to anything. Surrendering is happening when it is seen clearly. Surrendering is not something that you do. If you try to surrender, you are not surrendering. You have to see truth clearly, and you have to see it's game over. When we see truth as truth, it is game over. Then for a period you will be puzzled about how to move forward in life, because your only motivational force is suddenly gone. The motivational force that is called dissatisfaction. But think about it. Think about how wonderful it would be to be without dissatisfaction. What would that be like? Peaceful. Joyful. Not bliss. This has nothing to do with bliss. We do not want bliss. Bliss is for drug addicts. Peaceful, joyful, happiness. And then you start to move different. You look at truth and say, truth, what do you offer me? Which options do you offer me? Truth, what is offering me these options. Okay, then I choose between those options. And I move forward. Joyful. Peaceful. And I will have become a creative, peaceful force in the world. Being in harmony with existence. If you are seeking awakening or enlightenment or whatever we are to call it, I can tell you this much. You will never ever arrive, and it is not an arriving, but words. You will never ever arrive if surrendering doesn't take place, if surrendering doesn't happen. Surrendering to truth. Melting into truth. Melting into what is. So if you have any idea about awakening or enlightenment is something else than that, then you are fooling yourself. Stop fooling yourself. Suffering is resistance to what is. See if you can find some kind of suffering that does not entail you being in resistance to something. It is impossible. If there is something that you are suffering from, it is because you are in resistance to something that is. That kind of suffering you cannot make that kind of suffering go away. It is impossible because you are in opposition to reality. You are in opposition to what is. Truth. This. And when you see that clearly, then the chances are that you suddenly discover that what is miraculous, magnificent, extraordinary. Words cannot describe it. And within that, happiness is hidden in plain sight. Freedom, joy, peace, love. If you want that, peace, love, freedom, joy, happiness, whatever we call it, but not bliss. If you want that, see if you can escape what is. Try really, really, really hard. And then discover the pain that is a part of that trying, the suffering. And then you might at some point discover the futility in it. And when you clearly see the futility in it, surrendering is happening. And you are there, which is not a there, but more like a here. Merged with reality, merged with truth. And you might laugh out loud. It was here all the time, seemingly covered up by desires, dissatisfaction. So I think that this video was a very good example of what I was describing in the start. Starts out slowly, but then the download through me intensifies, becomes more and more clear, more and more precise. And towards the end, it is very precise, the message. I think that will do it for now. I will be back. Take care, my friend.